Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our Matriculate Leadership Training and Orientation. My name is Juliana. I use she, hers pronouns, and I'm super excited to be with all you AFLT members to talk about the AFLT Roadmap. So let's dig in. I'm going to hide my video and we can get going. So the goals of our session are to develop an understanding of recruitment goals and recruitment timelines, to understand the full scope of the AFLT leadership role and its responsibilities over the course of the term, to identify opportunities for growth and skill development as a matriculate leader, and to explore problem-solving strategies, including available support, structures, and resources. So let's look at our agenda. First, we're going to define the AFLT role and responsibilities. Then we're going to move into the advising fellow recruitment timeline and roadmap. Then we're going to talk about AFLT professional development and support. And then we're going to close things out looking at AFLT responsibilities in action with some specific examples from prior AFLT leaders. So it's a pretty dense agenda. So I thank you in advance for bearing with me. Feel free to grab a snack, a water, whatever you need to stay engaged and present during the session, and let's get to it. So first, we're going to talk about defining role and responsibilities. First thing we're going to talk about here is our AF leadership skills. So throughout the advising fellow leadership selection process, each of you demonstrated capabilities and passion in the following three areas: leadership skills, organizational skills, and interpersonal skills. Throughout your time as an AFLT member, you'll lean on each of those areas in order to carry out our values-driven recruitment approach and to build cohort communities of engaged advising fellows. Additionally, we have a responsibility as staff to work collaboratively with each of you on all of your leadership skills throughout your journey as a MAP leader. So during meetings with staff, during training sessions, and during the use of our resources, we'll work together to make sure you're supported to continue growing your leadership skills and qualities. So these skills are a work in progress that we'll work together on throughout your time as a member of the AFLT. So now let's look at leadership skills in more detail and how they connect to your role and responsibilities. So the first set of skills here are our leadership skills. These are essential to the AFLT role and to all leadership roles at Matriculate. So we're going to define leadership skills here as leadership, management, communication, and persistence. We do our best to elevate and create space for you and for each other to show up as leaders. So from voicing concerns and feedback, to delegating tasks, to communicating proactively and not taking the first mistake as a failure, you as a Matriculate leader will determine how you work with other students and model the characteristics and strengths of advising fellows for our future recruits. So I'm not going to read each of these skills in detail. You'll have access to these skills, but we really encourage you to go through these leadership skills on your own, reflect on what feels like a strength for you, reflect on what feels like a growth area, and that will allow you to target your progress in these skills throughout your time. So the next set of skills here are organizational skills of operations, prioritization, and time management. Now, as an AFLT member, these skills will be particularly essential for managing your recruitment specialty, which we'll discuss in detail later in this session. So you'll be managing your team in order to design and execute a specific aspect of advising fellow recruitment, and it will be your responsibility to ensure your team is moving forward and that all team members are supported in order to be successful in their roles. Additionally, as an AFLT member, there are a lot of moving parts and pieces to AF recruitment. So keeping a good sense of prioritization, operations, and time management is really important to ensure that you're moving forward towards your goals and communicating effectively with your team. Lastly, we have interpersonal skills. These are a crucial aspect of a successful leadership team. Strong relationships and communication between leadership team members are truly the baseline from which all the smaller recruitment tasks, action items, and plans will flow. So strong relationships and collaboration are really key to success, and they're also something that we really value as an organization. They also just make the job infinitely more fun, having strong relationships and collaborating with the other wonderful students you have on your team. So we really encourage you to take the time to get to know your teammates as people, feel free to, take time away from completing tasks and talking about recruitment plans to just connect. This is really essential, and something that you'll have an opportunity to do as we move throughout the rest of the training period. So hopefully you've already taken a look at the AFLT roadmap. If not, we'll look at it later in this session, but that outlines each month of the AFLT role and takes a deep dive into the skills and tasks you'll have to complete throughout your tenure as an AFLT member. But before getting too granular with the roadmap, we wanted to take a bigger look at the 3 responsibility areas which encompass a lot of the responsibilities of an AFLT member. So these will show up throughout the roadmap. As an AFLT student, you'll work on AF recruitment through the lens of management, planning, and community development. AFLT are integral to their leadership team's success in each of these 3 areas, making huge contributions to their team and fellowship's vision and progress in these spheres throughout advising fellow recruitment. So in terms of management, you're going to manage your assigned recruitment specialties, which I already addressed and we'll talk about in even more detail later on. You'll also manage advising fellow recruitment and selection responsibilities. This looks like conducting interviews and reading advising fellow applications. You'll also provide positive and constructive feedback to your team, particularly to your head advising fellow about the ways in which you think team communication could be improved, maybe aspects of your leadership team meetings that could change. And you'll also manage advising fellows to persist throughout the application process. So every AFLT will connect with prospective AFs on an individual basis, check in with them throughout their application process, and serve as a source of support, and hopefully enable them to persist. As you remember, it's a pretty lengthy process. Next, we have planning. So a lot of this will happen in collaboration with the other members of your leadership team. So you'll be working to co-develop recruitment plans. You'll also be working to develop your fellowship vision and values, harkening back to that recruitment pyramid of what kind of cohort environment you want to create, what kind of messages we want to send to incoming advising fellows. And you'll also work to plan recruitment events campaigns throughout the AF recruitment cycle. Lastly, we have community development. So you'll work on team building and community events for prospective AFs. You'll also build connections with other organizations on your campus, and you'll also build community within your leadership team and with students at other Matriculate leadership teams. So, how are these leadership, planning, and community responsibilities coming into play? They're going to come into play in other parts of the AFLT role in 3 of your main responsibilities during the advising fellow recruitment selection period. So first we have the AF recruitment and selection period, then we have the AF training and certification period, and then we have advising quality, which should really show up throughout everything that I just described. We should really be checking for advising quality from the moment we're engaging with prospective AFs all the way up through their certification and pairing with HSFs. So as an AFLT member, you'll be recruiting a diverse and highly qualified pool of AF applicants. You'll co-create that recruitment plan with your team, and you'll manage your recruitment specialty. Then once we finish that advising fellow recruitment and selection process, you will move on to AF training and certification, where you'll be working with AFs, connecting with them, reaching out to them, enabling them to persist throughout that multifaceted training and certification process. You'll also run advising skills evaluations, or ACEs, for those incoming advising fellows and provide feedback on their advising skills, what they can improve, what they're already really doing well with. And then you'll also work with your team to develop and facilitate training content. You'll be working with Matriculate staff here as well. This is a really great opportunity to, stand in front of those new advising fellows for the first time, share your vision for the cohort, and help them really kick off their formal training period in person. And then lastly, we'll do advising quality. So as I said, this should really permeate all aspects of the prior columns that I discussed. But throughout every step of the way, you're going to be identifying AF skills and qualities throughout that application review process, throughout the advising fellow interview process, and throughout the AF selection process. So you'll really be incorporating a quality lens. We want to look down the road to how we'll expect these AFs to show up with their high school students, how we expect them to persist throughout, 2 years as an advising fellow. So that's an overview of the responsibilities and how they'll show up throughout the program year. And now we're going to take a look at your AFLT roadmap itself. So now we're going to take a look at the AFLT roadmap. Now this is a highly detailed document that really goes through every aspect of the role throughout the fall all the way through May. Now, I'm not going to go through this document in detail because that would take a lot of time and because that's going to be your post work to really go through it every step of the way, sit with any questions you have, reach out to us with any questions you have. But I'm going to show you how to read this roadmap. So we have it broken down into the months of the year that you'll be working on the AFLT role. And we have these two columns here divided into overall responsibilities and important deadlines and weekly responsibilities. So we have some guiding questions below that, above that, excuse me, and those can really help you think about, the types of holistic overarching questions and considerations you should be thinking about during these months of recruitment. The kind of framing that we should be bringing to, an individual recruitment task or a weekly meeting. So check out those first. And then when we head down here, we have the overall responsibilities of the month. And as I said, those are going to be divided up into AF recruitment, management, community development, and advising quality and review. So those responsibilities that we already went over a bit earlier, but now you'll see how they kind of differ depending on what stage we're in the recruitment cycle. And then on the right, we have our important deadlines. So, here we have the summer deadlines, the stage we're in right now, the trainings that's going to set you up for success in this role. And then we have below the deadlines, we also have the weekly responsibilities. And then we have what's going to happen daily and or regularly as an AFLT member. So the goal of this roadmap is to allow you to see what this actually looks like, what the AFLT role truly looks like on a daily and weekly basis as we move through the deadlines and milestones of AF recruitment. So it goes all the way up through May. And if you have any questions as you move through this roadmap, please reach out to us as you take the time to review it yourself, because that will be hugely helpful for us to know, what is still not clear after sitting with this document. Awesome. So now that we've looked at the roadmap, we're going to talk about the way that the AFLT responsibilities are supporting the overall efforts of your leadership team. So you're not just, implementing these things in a vacuum, you're working together collaboratively with your HAFs and the National Advising Fellow Leadership Team on AF recruitment. So let's see how these responsibilities overlap with and differ from those of the HAFs and NAFLT. Beautiful. So you have some shared responsibilities here. You're all working together to recruit a full class of quality and diverse AFs. You're also working together in the winter period to see those AFs through training and establish a strong community in your fellowship. Then in the spring, you're ensuring they persist through certification. You'll also share your learnings for the 2024, hard to believe, leadership class, and also support in our recruitment efforts of a new class of leaders. And as an AFLT, you'll contribute to the recruitment plan and manage your recruitment specialty, whereas the head advising fellows and national advising fellow leadership teams will be guiding at a more macro level. So your HAF will be guiding and managing the entirety of the AFLT, will kind of be that leader in not only implementing the recruitment plan, but in organizing and managing it for your team. Additionally, your recruitment lead will work on that as well. They'll provide some constructive feedback to you. You'll also guide advising fellows through online training. Head advising fellows will take a greater leadership role in creating that training content, managing AFLT to support advising fellows in training. And NAFLT will be also working to review AFs for quality and support matriculate staff in developing trainings. Then lastly, you'll work on that AF certification and outreach and ACEs. You'll collect recruitment resources. HAFs will be leading fellowship meetings at that point. They'll be preparing advising fellows to meet with their HSFs, to work with them over the summer. And then NAFLT at that point will be working pretty independently with the matriculate staff. So in addition, if you're curious to get a greater sense of how your role overlaps with other leaders, you can feel free to take a look at the HAF and NAFLT roadmaps as well. This way you can get a better sense of how responsibilities are distributed among your team. So as you saw in the roadmap, a really essential element of the AFLT role is managing a particular aspect of AF recruitment, which we call a recruitment specialty. These recruitment specialties are a really great opportunity for you as a leader to gain experience and management expertise in a particular area of AF Rec. It also ensures that no single member of the team is overwhelmed by managing all aspects of AF recruitment and cohort building, since there is a lot to do. So as an AFLT member, you have an opportunity to tailor the specialties to the needs of your unique campus environment and the passions of your team members. So let's take a quick look at the specialties document to get a little bit more information. You'll also look at this as post-work after the session, so I'll just give a brief overview. So here is our guide to recruitment specialties. You'll be working collaboratively with your team to tailor these specialties to the needs of your unique campus. But these are some common roles that we've seen to be highly successful over the past years. And you'll also work with matriculate staff as you continue to innovate and nail down the specifics of these roles. So don't worry about that too much now. We're just kind of starting the conversation and starting the process. So here are some recommended recruitment specialties. And I encourage all of you to reflect on, what drew you to the AFLT role, what excites you about advising fellow recruitment, and where you think your personal skills and passions lie. It's always a conversation between team members about, who should manage what area of recruitment. So it's really an opportunity for you to speak up and let, your passions and desires lead the way. So, and I will also say that depending on the size of your AFLT, it's different at each campus. There might be 2 students working collaboratively on one of these responsibilities, or you might decide for one student to take on multiple responsibilities. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So our recommended recruitment specialties are social media manager, email campaign manager, personal outreach manager, and events and logistics manager. And we have outlined here the main responsibilities for each of these roles. They'll of course be tailored a bit to your particular campus and leadership team. And then the main responsibility for each of these roles. So social media manager, as you would expect, is creating social media content and really managing digital recruitment efforts on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. Email campaign manager, they're responsible for creating and executing mass outreach campaigns to prospective advising fellows. So things like mail merges, college newsletters, email blasts, things like that. Then we have personal outreach. So this individual is responsible for managing one-on-one student outreach via emails, phone calls, in-person conversations, coffee chats. And then lastly, events and logistics manager. They're responsible for managing the creation of recruitment events throughout the cycle. So things like info sessions, activities, fairs, community building events, tabling days, canvassing on campus. Now, the last thing I really want to highlight here is if this is your recruitment specialty, it does not mean, for example, if I was a social media manager, I'm not the only one creating all of the social media content. Instead, you are managing that aspect of recruitment. So you're responsible for ensuring that, whoever is working on social media content that week is creating the posts, uploading them. So you'll probably be taking a bigger role in creating that social media content, but it doesn't mean that you have to do everything. Same for all of these. So if I'm the personal outreach manager and we have 100 prospective AF candidates, that doesn't mean I myself am having a one-on-one conversation with each and every one of those students. Instead, I would be responsible for assigning those AFs to different members of my team and then ensuring that people are reaching out to those students, tracking to see if that's getting done, sending reminders to my fellow team members, maybe sending some talking points for them to use. So the specialty doesn't mean you're doing it all yourself. It means you're managing that body of work in order to get it done. I'm going to stop there, but after the session, please take some time to look at this document and think about where you would hope to plug in on your own team. Now I'm going to share some best practices from former AFLT members. These students have lived this experience on a day-to-day basis. They've seen the ins and outs of this role. I won't share these quotes out loud, but I think it's really important to hear from the students and the leaders themselves. And there will be opportunities for your team to connect with the 22 leadership students throughout training to hear their best practices and learnings. But I also really encourage you to reach out on your own and connect with them about any tips and tricks they have to share. Ask them to give you the unvarnished truth of what they really loved about this role, what they found challenging about this role. All of that I think is really, really important to have clear expectations going into your own experience. But again, everyone's, AFLT experience is different. And I really look forward to hearing all of your takeaways as we move throughout this process as well. The things I do want to highlight on this slide without reading them all is the importance of communication, the importance of kind of self-compassion and understanding that things will happen beyond our control in this process. That's okay, that's expected, and to have that patience with yourself. This quote kind of speaks to the same thing. Recruitment really is a marathon. We want to be sustaining our involvement and engagement over the process, not burning ourselves out and expecting too much of each other. And then lastly, planning. Planning is really important. It prevents, any 1 week from hopefully becoming too overwhelming. And it's a great opportunity for the team to bond. We have some more quotes here, so I'll pause for a couple seconds, give you all an opportunity to read them, take them in, reflect on your own. Awesome. So now we're going to move on to leadership support. Now, there are a lot of resources and guidance that we are going to be providing you. We just went through all of those responsibilities. Do not worry, you will have resources, staff, and a lot of other things in order to enable you to succeed in the AFLT role. So first, we're going to walk through the different professional development resources that exist for AFLT members at Matriculate. So as staff members, we really are here to support you throughout the entirety of your AFLT experience. So I'm going to walk through the different structures we've set up to provide that support. You can also always connect with us one-on-one. So first, we have our weekly office hours. Those are actually going to start next week. Excuse me, they're going to start this week. Woohoo! So we have those with me and with Patrick. Those are just open hours, time for you to hop on, have any questions that you have answered, just connect with us. Also, sometimes students will just hop on to say hi, which I always really love and appreciate. Otherwise, I'm just hanging out in the Zoom myself. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that time. But also, if the office hours time doesn't work with your schedule, if you have, a class or another obligation during that time, shoot me an email, shoot Patrick an email. We're always happy to put time on for students just to connect one-on-one and answer any questions you have. So please don't hesitate with that. Next, career support. I know that when I was looking for jobs, or internships in undergrad, it could be really overwhelming. So I'm really passionate about supporting students on that. Insofar as it relates to Matriculate, but also as it relates to anything else. We do have other organizations that we work with. We have some degree of experience, with writing references, rec letters, helping you with your cover letters, things like that. So that is really something that I encourage you all to take advantage of, or if you ever just want to kind of connect with us and talk about how you might be able to translate the skills you've learned in Matriculate to another area of interest of yours, that is also a really great thing that we love to do. Now we have challenging situation support. I really want to highlight this because there will be, for some campuses, difficult situations that, come up. Maybe, an emergency situation with a member of your team. or maybe, some movement or situation that's happening on your campus that you feel is, something that Matriculate staff should be aware of that you're not sure how to handle. Especially with COVID in the past year, that was obviously a lot of, what we were supporting students on. There were a lot of different challenges, whether students were remote or hybrid or in person. So this is kind of a broad category, but I want to ensure that no matter what's going on, whether it's in the personal lives of your AFLT or you, or just something going on campus that you want us to be aware of, we have a lot of policies and means of support to help you through that, as well as just, to support you as human beings. So I want to be sure to emphasize. Now getting a little bit more back to the recruitment side of things, staff and NAFLT will be providing weekly feedback on recruitment plans, on your fellowship values, and on your team progress overall. So you'll be working with your recruitment lead, whether that's an assigned staff member or an AFLT member, who has a great degree of expertise from their own experience as a Matriculate student leader. And they'll provide you constructive feedback and positive feedback on your team progress. They'll also be there just to bounce ideas off of and share best practices with. Then we have webinars like the one you're doing right now, on the advising fellow recruitment and selection process, including that AF application and interview process. And then lastly, we ask for a lot of feedback throughout the recruitment process to ensure that, things are going well for our leaders, and ensure that there's opportunities for collaboration across different fellowships. Now we're going to walk through the key resources and documents you'll work with throughout your time as an AFLT member. So throughout training, you'll have time to live in these documents and resources more deeply, but now I'm going to walk through them at a higher level. So first we have the recruitment management base. This is a key tool that you will be using on a daily and weekly process throughout recruitment with your entire team. So that's going to live in Airtable. We're going to have specific trainings to get you familiar with that, but for now, I'll just say that it will be your home base for tracking your recruitment plans, for tracking your progress. Then we have the Central Recruitment Handbook. So this is a document that has been updated this year and last year. It has really comprehensive recommendations for advising fellow recruitment. So everything from the social media process to individual AF outreach to big email campaigns. So it's a huge resource for you to kind of guide you in developing your recruitment plans, especially in these early weeks. Then we'll also have a campus-specific recruitment handbook. That's wonderful. It's been created by prior student leaders, and it has their best practices that are tailored to the unique needs of your campus or fellowship. So that is really great to, get a sense of how things work at your school or in your fellowship. We have a social media base. This is a new resource for this year created by one of our student leaders, Brian Lee at Emory, and it's a really amazing resource. It has a ton of social media templates and example posts, as well as tips and tricks for how to engage in successful social media recruitment. Then we have recruitment updates. So you'll be getting regular emails from Matriculate staff. I encourage you and require that you all read these thoroughly, because these will provide a lot of information about upcoming deadlines, advice, and resources. So these will be really important, and we'll also keep track of those updates after we send them, so you can manage all the communications outside of your inbox. And then we have a resource space. So this is a big set of folders that are all organized, that has just a lot of different email templates, text templates, graphics, all things that students have been created in the past, which is really wonderful because it means you aren't just, recreating things every year, duplicating past efforts. Maybe you can use an existing email template and just tweak it for your own needs. So that is our resource overview. And again, you'll have an opportunity to dive into each of these actual resources throughout the rest of training. So more to come here. Now I'm going to talk about the weekly leadership team meetings, which we mentioned earlier, but this is a really integral part of the AFLT and Matriculate team experience. So in these meetings, you'll create relationships with your HAFs and other members of the AFLT. You'll also be working collaboratively to design and implement recruitment strategies and plans. So these team meetings are a super key time to surface any questions or concerns that your team is facing, to assign shared responsibilities for the week, and to continue to innovate on your team's values, your team's communication style, and your shared expectations. And we'll start having our first team meetings during this training period. So that will be your first opportunity to work with your team, see where everybody's at, and begin to, chart your progress and start to chart a path to move forward into the AF recruitment and cohort building process. So they're a great opportunity to build relationships with your team, to design and implement your recruitment plan collaboratively, to co-create your fellowship values, your vision, and your community expectations. And it's an opportunity to provide positive and constructive feedback to each other and to yourself, to speak, frankly about what's been going well for your team and what can be improved, so you can continue to innovate, reevaluate, and critically engage with what is or isn't going well. Wonderful. Okay, everybody, we are almost through. We are at our last section. We are now going to look at these responsibilities in practice. So I've talked a lot about what the different AFLT responsibilities are, what skills you're going to be using, but now let's look at some work that has actually been done by AFLT in the past, and why it works and what makes it effective. So first, taking a look at this Princeton class of 2024 social that was held. So last year, during the Advising Fellow recruitment process, our Princeton Fellowship held a really wonderful social online for the class of 2024 at Princeton. And it was really well attended and well received by students. And I just wanted to highlight some of the work that they did. So this is the wonderful leadership team who put this on. And they gave some opening remarks and really created a space for these students to get to know each other in a fun setting, as well as giving these students an opportunity to learn more about Matriculate. So they gave some information about Matriculate, what we do as an organization, and then they outlined the schedule. So they had a mixture of, just fun icebreaker games, things that were totally unrelated to Matriculate. And then they had an opportunity for students to learn more about us as an organization. Then they broke students out into breakout rooms and had them connect with each other one-on-one. And then at the end stayed on for just an optional chat with these students to get to connect with them and learn more about them. Now, what makes that social great? What made it work? I think it really shows 3 AFLT responsibilities. 1, organization and planning. They had a super clearly outlined agenda and structure for the event, and there were well-defined next steps offered to prospective AF. So at the end of the session, they invited students to connect with them for a coffee chat. They had a link for students that were interested in learning more about the program. And they also did a really great job in terms of organization and planning of, publicizing this event to the 2024 students, and just did a really great job of planning and executing the event. Next is community building. So I think especially last year with virtual education, this provided a great opportunity for incoming Princeton students to get to know each other, to connect socially, to learn about Matriculate, but also just to play some games. And I think students really did appreciate that space. It also shows that Matriculate is a welcoming environment, connecting with incoming first years and providing space to connect both about Matriculate's mission and the goals of our organization, but also outside of that, which I think is super important as well. And then lastly, it also served an AF recruitment goal. So students had an opportunity to learn more about Matriculate. They had a really clear description of our values and our mission. And later in the slideshow, which I didn't show, they really do effectively outline what the advising fellow role is and what the upcoming application deadlines were for last year's recruitment cycle. So it's a really wonderful example of an event that the AFLT put together that was really successful and incorporated a lot of these responsibilities and skills. Now we're going to look at one more example, and this is an example social media post from last year's Yale cohort. So this is a social media post created by last year's Yale leaders that talks about who they are, what brought them to Matriculate, and what their perspectives are. So we hear from Peyton and Saida, as well as the three members of their AFLT, Julia, Sebastian, and Spencer. And I think that this does a really great job of showing students who their leadership team is, putting faces to a name, showing that Matriculate is composed of their peers, of students with a wide variety of experiences. And as well as really shows, I love that they highlight the most important lesson that they've learned through Matriculate to really emphasize what it means to each of these students, why they joined, and what has been resonant for them in their individual experiences. It's also just very pretty and eye-catching, and I think does a great job of communicating in the social media context. So I already talked a little bit about this, but why does it work? Um, AFLT responsibilities shown here are organization and planning. It's a clear social media campaign with the goal of meeting the AFLT. They also manage their team effectively to provide the necessary quotes and photos in order to make this post happen, right? Now, also community building is huge. So as I said, AFC, the faces and stories behind Matriculate at Yale, they, get a deeper sense of what Matriculates means to these students and shows, the variety of motivations that students have in order to join Matriculate. And then lastly, advising fellow recruitment. So I think you really get to see our impact in a very real way in these stories through these students sharing their firsthand experiences and why they're interested in Matriculate in the first place. Great. So that hopefully gave you a better sense of how these responsibilities show up in the work that you're doing, whether it's creating a social event, creating a social media post. I hope that that was helpful. And you'll also have an opportunity to see more real examples throughout training. But now we've made it to the end of the session. So now we're going to check back in with that agenda to talk about what are your next steps in your AFLT training and orientation process. Great. So now we are on our position specific roadmap session, which we just completed. Congratulations. And after you have completed this roadmap session, you're going to review the Recruitment Specialties document. You're also going to, I would encourage you to re-familiarize yourself with your position-specific roadmap and everything that is contained within that space. We're also going to have you complete the exit ticket for your session. I switched over to the Airtable view here so that you can see where this information is housed in both places. When we'll also have you review that central recruitment handbook, which I mentioned earlier, which will give you just a stronger foundation of the different aspects of AF recruitment and head you one step further in the direction of coming up with a recruitment plan with your team. And as a reminder, this hub is going to be a great space for you to find all of this information and all of these links in addition to your agenda. But if you have any questions, thank you so much for bearing with me in this process, for your engagement. Feel free to connect with me, connect with Patrick, attend our office hours. And I just look forward to seeing you all at the next session and hearing your takeaways from this one. Thanks so much.